Okay, we're recording. All right, welcome everybody. If you haven't already, if you wouldn't mind, just if you're able to on another screen, get to the Nearpod link. If you're not, if you wouldn't mind replying through the room chat, then I know that you're working with me here and going through those things. Okay, just so you remember, this lesson is being recorded for learning purposes. As we're going in live class, make sure you want to follow along with the Nearpod lesson. Use the chat tools respectfully and appropriately. This class, there are some issues that are kind of a little like, I don't know, like, I mean, we've already had quite a few guys go through them, right? So just make sure you're using the chat tool respectfully and appropriately, and also respond to questions and instructions the first time. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over criminal law. Okay, so you're going to answer multiple choice questions of criminal law. Let me just jump to the course real quick. As you remember, the class recordings are always right here. I do, if you're having issues on the quizzes and stuff like that, I do go over them at the end of class, right? So there shouldn't be a reason why you're getting a super low score. All you have to do is go get on the recording and, skip until I'm going over the questions, right? that easy, right? That's where the recordings are. They're also in the content. But if we go to plan, you'll see here that we have live class basically every Thursday, and then we'll have the assignments due the week after, and the blocks like the 16th, 17th. Okay. So you have some time to make up if you miss something or miss a class, go on a cruise, I don't know, something like that. Okay. Content real quick. Right now we're going to be in unit 3. You'll have 2 assignments this week. One is the unit 3 quiz, and the next one is the mid-course reflection. So you just need to write 100 words or more about what you learned about the unit. Okay. So, or not just this unit, but basically the course, right? So these first three units here. So just write a little bit about that. You should have learned something, I hope, right? And go from there. And then is the quiz. I'll be going over these questions for the quiz. There's only 6 questions, so shouldn't be that bad. Okay, let's go over it. Criminal law. So there's different types of law or law concepts. Okay. There's common law, which centers around like traditions that we have, what people have done previously on the basis of decisions today. Okay. There's case law. So case law is basically made by the courts. So let's say an issue arises and the courts, right, particularly the Supreme Court, would be, so somebody asked a question, does arson and murder count as common? I would say yes, because we've always had that as a custom and tradition, okay? It is put into statutory law, which I'll talk about that in a second. And then case law has never had anything on it because we always know that murder and arson, it's not a good thing, right? It's not appropriate. So I would say that, okay? So I'd say common law would be like murder, those things that we've always done, those common law things. Case law is something that's decided upon the judge. Like, so the Supreme Court, right? They're the ones that make all the laws, and you have the other courts that kind of go through there. And they say, like, for example, one that's kind of a hot topic or whatever is like abortion, right? So it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says yes or no, whatever, and that becomes case law, and that's what's kind of followed unless there's some appeals made and it's changed, okay? So that's case law. And then you have statute law. And no, it doesn't matter if you turn your assignment early. Yes, I said abortion. Okay. So that would be an example of case law that's kind of moved up there. It's like, should you have, when is it okay? All that kind of stuff. And it laws up, it goes up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's the one that gets to it. So that would be called case law. Another one is statute law. Okay. So statute law is where the legislature, right? So for example, the state legislature is in session right now. You know, you could go to their website and you could see them, you know, going in committee or whatever, and they're making laws right now. So they're passed bills and they make laws. And so that would be something like that. And these laws, statutes change all the time. Case law doesn't change as much. Common law is always just tradition and kind of goes through there. So those are those three different types. Okay, so we have different acts, okay? So you have acts of commission and you have acts of omission. So commission is basically when you commit something. So if I committed murder, right? Or I committed a theft, or I committed this, right? I'm actually going out and doing something. But there is times when you can get in trouble for acts that you did not follow through with, okay? So for example, like my thing is, as a teacher, I'm a required, what is it called? So if I see any kind of child abuse, I have to report it, right? A verified, I can't remember what the things, but it basically means that I have to do that. Mandated reporter. Thank you, Kelsey. Somebody, yep, and Allie. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm a mandatory reporter. So I have to, if I suspect something or see it, I have to report it. If not, I have broken the law and I've committed an act of omission, okay? So some other things, like kids are actually required to attend school. Okay. So if you didn't attend school, your parents, if you're under 14, are legally liable, right? If it's 14 and or above, then the children kind of have a little bit part of that. Okay. Like failure to signal, right? As you're driving a car. Okay. Those would be acts of omission. Then acts of commission, we already talked about those. Where you're committing something, so murder, theft, anything that you're physical act that you're doing. So those are just some terms that we're using as like if you're looking at the legal system. Let's watch this little video. I believe it's about lawyers and stuff. Just kind of interesting, and we'll discuss it in a second.
Have you ever wondered how criminal charges are filed? Well, stay tuned because I'm going to tell you how. This is Crim Law 101. I'm your professor, and class is in session. My name is Jamal Kersey, and I'm a criminal defense attorney in San Diego. And in this video, I'm going to explain how criminal charges get filed in court. Let's start with police investigation. One of the ways police investigations are initiated is in response to a 911 call. Someone calls 911 with an emergency, the dispatcher puts the call out, and officers respond to the scene. The officers take the statement of the reporting party and any witnesses. Crime scene investigators may take photographs, collect evidence, or shoot video of the scene. Later on, a detective may follow up with any witnesses to confirm or clarify their statements. Reports are prepared and the evidence collected is compiled. The police then turn over all of the information, the reports containing the witness statements, videos, photographs, etc., over to the DA's office. From there, an issuing DA reviews the evidence. The police will generally recommend the charges which should be filed. The issuing DA reviews the evidence to see what, if any, charges should be filed. And this is done by looking at the elements of a crime. For example, a robbery in violation of Penal Code Section 211 has two elements. One is the taking of property, and two, using fear or force. A burglary in violation of Penal Code Section 459 has two elements as well. One is the entry of a building, and two, with the intent to commit theft or any felony therein. And so the DA is analyzing the facts to see which charges she believes can be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Sometimes additional evidence is needed in order for the DA to reach the conclusion that she can prove her case beyond a reasonable doubt. In this instance, the detectives would actually be called on to conduct further investigation. In other occasions, even though the detectives make a recommendation for certain charges to be filed, the DA does not believe that the charge can be proved beyond a reasonable doubt and declines to file the charge. An important distinction is the fact that law enforcement merely needs probable cause in order to arrest somebody for committing a crime. Probable cause is a relatively low standard. A DA must be confident that she can prove her case beyond a reasonable doubt. And this explains why sometimes people are arrested for a crime but don't actually get charged in court, or why in some cases charges get dismissed after they've been filed. Assuming there's sufficient evidence justifying criminal charges, the next step is the drafting of a document called the complaint. The complaint has the defendant's name, date of birth, and booking number on it, along with a case number. It lists each of the charges and allegations against the defendant, along with the sentencing ranges for each charge. The complaint is then filed in court. The next step is the defendant's initial appearance, which is called the arraignment. And in the arraignment, the accused is formally read the charges against him, and he enters his plea. You can check out my video on where I explain what happens at the arraignment. Well, that's a quick explanation on how criminal charges get filed in court. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please.
All right. So that kind of gave us a little bit about how things are filed away when we're looking at a crime, right? So a crime's committed, and that's how the process is. So just a quick question. After watching the video, what kind of questions might you have? Because I know there's a lot being thrown at you in regards to, because there is a lot with the legal system. How many codes are there? Oh, wow. Okay, so let's just talk about Utah real quick. I'm going to go to le.utah.gov. This is, I mean, we could watch the session now. This is the legislative body. But if you go to code and you go to Utah code, here's all the titles. And then in each title, there are, oh, this one only has one. Wow. Okay, so let's do with counties. All right, so these have all the chapters. And in chapters, they have all the different codes and stuff here, okay? So there's like thousands almost, right, of Utah code. And that's just Utah, right? You'd have all the things. Okay, interesting. Good question, though. What's a DA's job? So district attorney, is that what you're talking about? I'm assuming. So a district attorney is the one that when a police officer brings something towards her, the district attorney is the one that prosecutes that individual, right? And you kind of heard a little bit about that sometimes, so in a police officer case, you just need something beyond a reasonable doubt. Or sorry, not reasonable doubt, but probable cause. So you only need to be arrested on probable cause, right? And then it goes in here, and then this legal attorney, the district attorney, has to see if they have enough evidence in order to basically prosecute them without a reasonable doubt. And there's a whole process that kind of goes on in there. Okay. How much say does a DA have in cases? Ooh, wow. Probably a lot. There's a lot of district attorneys so there's county attorneys, right? Like Weber County, if something happens in Weber County, go there. If something happens in Ogden City, they have their own there and so forth. So they have a lot of cases. They're working a lot, right? why are there a lot of codes and how many are there? As you see, you can look at all the Utah codes if you want to go in here. I'll throw this in the chat. If you really want to look at how many codes there are, there's tons and tons and tons. Okay. All right. Why are there a lot of codes? And I think why there are a lot of codes is because you have like an issue that comes up, right? And the legislature is like, well, we need to make something for this issue. And then sometimes they don't go through and take away the other issues, the other things that are maybe outdated. So, for example, there was like things on there. Like I can remember there was like a cultural law, if you remember, that was created like in Prussia, where he talked about where babies couldn't sleep with their mothers. And that was a law. That would be something that needs to be kind of taken off. And then there needs to be things that are kind of put on there, if that makes sense. Okay. I can't believe you haven't had lunch right now. That's my question. Why haven't you had lunch? Do we have to memorize these codes? No. So my cousin's an attorney. And so what he does is he actually has these books that basically go in, and then when there's a code that they're referencing, he turns to the code and it actually gives him all of the case law that's basically there. Because what happens is you have the code and then you have case law that's built up upon it that tries to clarify it down to a thing. And that's where he makes his argument. What do DAs actually do? Hopefully I explained that already. They prosecute any criminals that might be coming through. Say commit matter, please don't. But if there is no evidence, would the charges get dropped? Yep. If there's no evidence and they couldn't find beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So they have to convict you beyond a reasonable doubt. That means the whole jury has to decide that you did it, right? And so usually there's a jury of like 12. Okay. How many codes? Why so many? I think we did that. Is there a job position where it's required to memorize all the codes? No. As I said, we're not into memorizing things, right? We're into be able to research and problem solve and be able to do that. How do they choose a jury? Very good question. So we will talk about this a little bit more in other classes, but I'll just mention it real quickly. Anybody who pays taxes is put in a little lottery thing, and they do what's called jury duty. And they send out letters saying, hey, these days you have to be there. And then they have a selection committee, and they may throw out jurors and stuff like that, and they'll select the jury. And then you have to, if you are selected, then you have to sit on there for these things, and it's all confidential and stuff like that. And you do get paid a little bit, but not enough to cover your job. So, yeah, the jury could be anybody, but usually they want the jury to be someone of their peers, is what they say. So somebody that is relative level of education and income and a lot of stuff like that. Okay. What is a jury? So a jury is basically a body of people that are selected that would declare whether a person is innocent or guilty. Okay. They can have a trial where the judge is the one that makes the decision, but in big trials, they go and they have a jury, and the jury has to decide whether this person is innocent or they basically like not necessarily innocent, but whether they're guilty of the crimes being committed or if they're acquitted. Okay, which means that they don't know, but it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And that means every single juror, all 12 jurors, have to agree that this person did it. Okay. They are convicted or not, basically. Yep, if they're convicted or not. Yep, exactly. All right, we're going to run through some stuff because you guys had some awesome questions. You can see in the bottom here, general provisions, statute of limitations. Let's talk about statute of limitations real quick. Just some important ones. So statute of limitations, a capital offense. So statute of limitations means how long, if you do something and it's like 5 years from now, let's say you committed a felony and it was 5 years now, you got away with it, basically. They can't convict you because statute of limitation is 4 years. A misdemeanor is 2 years. An infraction is 1. So if you have to, but a capital offense like murder or one of these other ones that we talked about, those capital offenses, there's no statute of limitations. So basically 30 years from now, if I, like somebody killed somebody and they found out who it was, they could still be convicted. They could still be arrested and convicted. Okay. But with these other ones, there's time. And if the time passes and they don't do it, I guess you got away with it, right? Okay. You already talked about information principles. Okay, let's talk about elements of a crime because I think that's important. Okay, so each crime is composed of elements. Each of these elements which must be proven in order for a defendant to be found guilty. Okay, so for example, in the code, right? We go back to the code that we talked about that's made by the legislature. Like for a theft, so they have to show. So this is like the district attorney or the attorney, right? That's prosecuting has to show unauthorized control. Okay, so that they took something, right? Unauthorized. There has to be a property of another person. So it's like, well, he stole water. Well, is that property of another person? Well, it could be, right? If you're talking maybe about water rights, irrigation stuff, maybe, right? So you got to think of that as a property of another. And then the intent to deprive. So the intent to take away, right? So a lot of this stuff, you got to really look into all of that. Accessoriness means unauthorized control. Means rea. Yeah, it's Latin words that they use. Okay, let's see what else here. We talked about different classifications. Felony is punishable by prison. A misdemeanor is punishable by jail. So jail is be up to 1 year. We talked about capital offenses before, right? And those, there's no statute of limitations on those. First degree felony, 5 years imprisonment. This would be murder, aggravated burglary, aggravated robbery, aggravated kidnapping, rape. Yes, there's a difference between prison and jail. Okay. Jail is short term, up to a year. So you think about because I live in Weber County, so they have Weber County Jail. Okay. That's where it's short term. Prison is long term. Okay. So if you did felony and stuff like that. So for example, 1 to 15 years for a second degree felony, manslaughter. So you'd be put in prison, not jail. Kidnapping, burglary of a residence, robbery, items above $5,000, excess of $5,000. So third degree felony is 0 to 5 years. Theft between $1,000 and $5,000. Arson, intent to defraud insurers, which we've talked about before. Aggravated assault. Can't multiple, but I don't know if they can compound like that. That maybe I'd have to ask somebody that knew more. Sorry, I don't know that answer, to be honest with you. Okay, then you have class A misdemeanor. Okay, 1 year in jail. These are the ones that are like jail or lower felonies are in jail. Get moved jails when they're incarcerated. It just depends on where. Really, when moving a jail, one of the the bargaining chips, right? I would say by lawyers is to be able to get put is to be able to be put like in a certain facility, right? So for example, there's a place like a prison that has basically it's basically like a day camp a little bit, where it's really easy. Like you go and play tennis all day. It's for non-violent offenders, usually people that have committed white collar crimes. So they basically like cheated or defrauded and that kind of stuff. And that's one of the things they do. One of the attorneys will be like, oh, I want them to be in this facility, right? And so they may move things. They also may move because of overcrowding and that kind of stuff too. And then you can also say, like, sometimes declare if you're international, or not international, but across state lines, you can actually sometimes choose the state that you want to be incarcerated in. So, and I don't know the max years for rape. You'd have to look it up in the penal code. Okay, assault an officer. Okay, let's just go through these things real quick. Class B misdemeanor, Class C. Okay, let's answer this question and then I'll go over the questions for our quiz because we're starting to run out of time. Okay, can you guys tell me the difference real quick on the Nearpod? What's the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony? The difference between a misdemeanor and a felony. Yeah, if you are going to any physical violence towards a police officer, yeah, you're probably not going to get a good outcome. All right. Can anybody tell me the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony? Okay, imprisonment for a felony, jail for a misdemeanor. Good. Misdemeanor is $300 to $1,000, and a felony is more. Yep. When you're talking about theft, you're right. I'm thinking about dollars. Felony is horrible. A misdemeanor isn't as bad, but still bad. Yep. The time for the statute of limitations expired. Yep. And severity of the crime. Misdemeanors are less serious than felonies, carry a lighter penalties. Awesome. Typical penalties such as include less than a year, jail, community service, fines, rehabilitation, probation. Good. Time of your imprisonment, your smaller wrongdoings. Good. Felony bad, misdemeanor slightly less bad. Yep. Okay. So speeding wouldn't necessarily be a misdemeanor. It'd be an infraction is what we'd call it, right? And so usually those are just fines. Like my wife got pulled over by a police officer today because she ran a stop sign. They gave her a warning, which was nice. Okay. All right. Let's go over the quiz, guys, because we'd have a lot more to go over, but we just don't have time. So I want to go over the quiz with you. There's my contact information, but let's go over the quiz. So if we're going over it real quick, is all right. So under what branch of government does law enforcement fall? Okay. Judicial is but judges. Executive is basically the government in particular, and legislative is the one that makes the laws. Okay. So they're part of the government that's in power. Okay. So look at that one there. Okay. The next one. A justice court has authorized to hear a theft case involving merchandise valued is $285. Which is this classified? Does it classify as a Class B misdemeanor? Yes or no? It's not very much, is it? Okay. So think of that there. Okay, the next one. An appeal of a verdict from a justice court will be heard in the district court. Talk about the district attorney, right? Or Judge Judy's court. Okay, next. The Chief Justice of the Utah Supreme Court is elected by the people every 4 years. Okay. This is something we really didn't talk about, but justices are appointed by the governor. So think about that. Okay. And it's usually I wouldn't say a lifetime sentence, but a pretty long one. Okay. All right. Drug court was established as a last resort for the three-time offenders. Okay. We didn't get a lot into the drug court. Okay. But drug court, do you think they would just put them in there for the third time, or they put in there right away? Okay. All right. Last one. Okay. An appeal court is the court of original jurisdiction. An appellate court. Okay. So appellate court, we didn't talk about this, but you can get appeal. So let's say you were convicted of a crime and you go to appeal. Okay. It's going to go to the same area that you had your first court in. Would that be true or false? Okay. Or it's going to stay in that same area. It's not going to move to like Texas, is it? Or is it going to stay here? The original court. Okay. So I'm hoping that gave you a lot of hints. Okay. All right. That ends our class today. If you guys have any questions, I will be here to stick around to answer anything. If you have anything else you want to talk to me about, you can call or text or email me. But I'm going to stop the recording here, but I'll stay after if you guys have any questions. So thanks. Appreciate you being here.